All right, our story this week is a really nice one for Passover. It's called Matzo Ball Moon by Leslie Newman. It's a really nice story. Let's get started. Okay. On the morning of Passover, Eleanor woke up bright and early and ran downstairs to the kitchen. Mama and Daddy were sitting at the table drinking their coffee. "Where's Bubby?" Eleanor asked. "Isn't she here yet?" Mama put a bowl of cereal down at Eleanor's place. "She'll be here soon, Eleanor. Come and eat your breakfast." "Is Bubby going to make chicken soup with matzo balls?" Eleanor asked. "I hope so," said Mama. "I hope so," said Daddy. Eleanor lifted a spoonful of milk from her bowl and blew on it, pretending it was chicken soup, still too hot to eat. Then she took a bite of cereal and ate it slowly, pretending it was a sweet, chewy matzo ball. Eleanor's big brother Joshua raced into the kitchen, gulped down his orange juice, and ran out to catch the school bus, just the way he always did. "Don't forget, Bubby's coming today," Mama called after him. Then Daddy left for work and Mama cleared the breakfast dishes. Eleanor waited and waited and waited. At last she heard the chug, chug, chug of Bubby's car pulling into the driveway. "Bubby!" Eleanor ran outside to give her grandmother a great big hug. Bubby was soft and round and smelled like a flower garden. "Bubby," Eleanor asked, "are you going to make chicken soup with matzo balls?" Bubby thrust her hands on her hips and pretended to be insulted. "Do the leaves tumble down from the trees every fall?" she asked. "Yes," said Eleanor. "And do the flowers come up from the ground and blossom every spring?" "Yes." "And does your Bubby make chicken soup with matzo balls every year for Passover?" "Yes," said Eleanor. "Yes, yes, yes." "Well then," said Bubby, "what are we waiting for?" They carried Bubby's suitcases into the house, and Bubby unpacked her two special cooking pots, one for the chicken soup and one for the matzo balls. Mama handed Bubby a yellow apron with flowers all over it, and Bubby went right to work. First, she put a big chicken in the soup pot. Then she cut up celery and carrots and onions and put them in the pot too. Next, she filled the pot with water and set the soup on top of the stove to cook. Soon, the whole house smelled like a holiday. "Now for the matzo balls," said Bubby. "I need matzo meal and eggs and oil and salt." Mama got out the ingredients while Bubby filled the second pot with water and set it on the stove to boil. "Eleanor," Bubby asked, "are you going to help me make the matzo balls?" Eleanor thrust her hands on her hips and pretended to be insulted. "Does the snow fall from the sky every winter?" she asked. "Yes," said Bubby. "And does the sun shine hot and bright in the sky every summer?" "Yes." "And don't I help you make matzo balls for Passover every year?" "Yes," said Bubby, laughing, "and just for that, I'm going to make the first matzo ball an extra special one just for you." Eleanor helped Bubby mix together all the ingredients with a big wooden spoon. Then Bubby took a clump of dough out of the bowl and rolled it around and around between her hands. "This one will be yours," Bubby said, dropping the big fat matzo ball into the boiling water. Eleanor watched it tumble around. "Now, help me make the rest of them," Bubby said. Soon, Eleanor and Bubby were busy rolling globs of dough between their hands. The dough felt soft and mushy, but Eleanor knew the matzo balls would be nice and hard and chewy after they were cooked in the boiling water. 20 minutes later, Bubby lifted Eleanor's matzo ball out of the pot with her wooden spoon. It was the biggest, lumpiest, bumpiest, yummiest looking matzo ball Eleanor had ever seen. "Can I eat my matzo ball now?" Eleanor asked. "Of course you can," said Bubby. "Go get a bowl." Just as Bubby turned from the stove with Eleanor's matzo ball, a voice called out, "I'm home!" And Joshua came running into the kitchen, his school books flying. "Hi, Bubby!" Joshua threw his arms around Bubby and squeezed her tight. "Is that matzo ball for me?" "No," said Bubby. "This one is for Eleanor." Bubby slid the matzo ball into Eleanor's bowl. "But maybe she'll share it with you." "I don't want to share," Eleanor said, taking the bowl from Bubby. "We made lots of matzo balls, Bubby. Can't Joshua have one of his own?" "Joshua, go get a bowl," Bubby said, and she fished another matzo ball out of the pot. Happy Passover, everyone! Daddy came into the kitchen home early from work for the holiday. Don't I get a matzo ball? Go get a bowl, Eleanor and Joshua said together. Bubby gave Daddy a matzo ball. Well, said Bubby after a minute, how are they? Delicious, said Daddy. Nice and chewy, said Joshua. Bubby, Eleanor said, this is the best matzo ball I have ever had. Who's going to help me set the dining room table? Mama asked, coming into the kitchen. My, don't those matzo balls look good. She went over to the cupboard, got a bowl, and helped herself from the steaming pot. Before long, it was almost dark and time to get ready for the Seder. Bubby and Eleanor went into the dining room to assemble the Seder plate. Let's see, Bubby said. We have the egg, the shank bone, the parsley, the salt water, the matzah, and the bitter herbs. What are we missing, Eleanor? Eleanor looked at the Seder plate. I know, she said. We need to make the haroses. You're right, said Bubby. Go get me the apples and walnuts. They're in the fruit bowl on the kitchen counter. Eleanor headed for the counter, but the matzo balls smelled so good she couldn't stop herself from going over to the stove and eating one. I'll get the macaroons. Joshua ran into the kitchen just as Eleanor was heading back to the dining room with the apples and walnuts. On his way to the pantry, Joshua stopped at the stove. Those matzo balls were so nice and chewy, he said to himself. I think I'll have another one. Daddy came into the kitchen with a yarmulke on his head, just as Joshua was rushing out with the macaroons. We won't be eating for a while, he said to himself. I think I'll just have a matzo ball. Just as he finished the last bite, Mama came into the kitchen for the candlesticks. Will you put these on the table, she asked, handing them to Daddy. As soon as he left the kitchen, she went to the stove. I better check those matzo balls, she said, helping herself to a nice fat one. At last, it was time for the Seder to begin. Mama lit the candles and said the special blessing. Daddy turned to the first page of the Haggadah and began to read the story of Passover. Bubby passed around a pitcher of water and a towel so everyone could wash their hands. Eleanor asked the traditional 4 questions. Joshua broke the special middle matzah called the afikomen and said the prayer over it. When it was time for the Passover meal, Bubby served the soup. Where's your matzo ball? Eleanor asked Bubby, pointing to Bubby's bowl with her spoon. There aren't any left. Somebody's been eating my matzo balls, Bubby said, pointing her finger around the table. I had an extra one, Joshua said. Here, you can have mine, Bubby. No, take mine, said Daddy. I already had 2. I've had my fill. Here, take my soup. Mama slid her bowl toward Bubby. I'll share mine with you, Eleanor said, slicing her matzo ball in half with the edge of her spoon. Shh, said Bubby, shaking her finger at everyone. Eat up, all of you. As long as my family enjoys, I enjoy. And next time, I'll make so many matzo balls, we'll not only have enough for the Seder, we'll eat them for breakfast the next day, too. After they finished the Passover meal, it was time to open the door for Elijah, the prophet who will one day come and bring peace to the world. Eleanor went to the front door and opened it. She looked out at the dark night sky, filled with stars and stars and stars. As Eleanor kept watch for Elijah, the full moon began to rise. The night was so clear she could see all the craters of the moon. The moon is so big and lumpy and bumpy, Eleanor thought. It looks just like a matzo ball. Bubby, come quick, she called. Bubby came and put her arm around Eleanor's shoulders. Did you see Elijah? Bubby asked. No, said Eleanor, but I found a big, bumpy, lumpy, yummy-looking matzo ball. Bubby looked at Eleanor. Where? There. Eleanor pointed to the moon. There's the matzo ball moon, Bubby, and it's just for you. Bubby looked up. My, doesn't that look delicious? She laughed. Let's go get our spoons. But instead of going back to the table, Bubby and Eleanor stood together, gazing with wonder at the big, bumpy, lumpy, yummy-looking matzo ball moon. The end. And happy Passover. Bye.